But there is a poem, a line of poem from Hafiz that says, دلنشان شد سخنم تا تو قبولش کردی آری آری سخن عشق نشانی دارد. It says, what I say penetrates your heart because whatever comes from heart goes through heart. Worldly renowned and very precious Nowruz, Persian New Year, and I'm really, really interested to sit down and listen to Professor Touraj Daryaee.
Dr. Daryaee, however, is known most for his expertise on Sasanian Persia, including his book entitled Sasanian Persia, The Rise and Fall of an Empire.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much, Yassijan, for that very kind introduction. If I could have just 10 minutes of your time, I'll read something very simple about the importance of Nowruz. That is, Nowruz meaning the new day, for those who are not familiar with the Persian language, is, for us at least, those who belong to this Iranian world, culturally speaking, is by far the most joyous and important celebration among the Iranians and I think many countries, of course, in Asia. The spring equinox marks the changing of the year and the regeneration of life and a new birth of world according to Iranian beliefs. This is indeed the basis of the New Year celebration, or Nowruz, which has a, let's say, 3 millennia of tradition behind it. During Nowruz, Iranians from various religious, ethnic, and linguistic background come together to greet the new year in their homes and hope for a better year to come. The story of Nowruz, or Iranian New Year, is wrapped in myths and legends, which are beautifully told in the Persian epic, the Shahnameh of Ferdowsi, or the Book of Kings, if you want the translation. The story goes that when one of the earliest and greatest of the mythical kings of Iran, Jamshid, ascended the throne, he organized the realm and brought culture to people. He then made a throne with jewels and was able to have it elevated by supernatural beings to reach the heavens. According to the book, he sat on the throne in the sky like the sun shining above. Then the world's creatures gathered in wonder about him and scattered jewels on him and called that day the new day, Nowruz. According to this Persian tale, during the Nowruz, people put aside their differences and make a great feast, which includes much wine and music, at least in the olden days, and of course tonight. Henceforth, no one knew of sorrow, sadness, or death in the olden days. This is the legendary history of Nowruz, which is mentioned and memorized by children in Iran, Afghanistan, Tajikistan, and the countries surrounding modern-day Iran. The Book of Kings, or the Shahnameh, is about 1,000 years old, but it is conceivable that the story was much older than that, and indeed it is. How old? Well, let me just take you to about 2,500 years ago, rapidly. There are pictorial images, of course, or in rock reliefs at the great Achaemenid hall or capital called Persepolis, which there, of course, you see a great ceremonial procession at work if you have gone to the Apadana Palace. And it is there that you see people from the various parts of this ancient empire come in line with gifts to the, let's say, the king. And we also have a very interesting image of a lion devouring a bull, which has been suggested perhaps this is the image of winter being devoured by the spring. And hence, there is significance to this all the way 2,500 years ago, vis-a-vis the Nowruz. Greek sources, now even leaving Persepolis, tell us that these people brought precious objects as gifts to the king, Old Persian Baji. And the king himself all the way back to Cyrus, whose cylinder is coming very soon to Los Angeles, I hope you know, that the king also made a proper sacrificial ceremony and made a feast and distributed presents among all, and even joined in the dance and merrymaking. So a very old tradition. To jump to the Parthians, I'm not going to talk about every single dynasty, I won't bore you, but I want you to know that the Persian text Visoramin captures this Parthian life, where we know that all the way in Marv, a long time ago, in what is modern-day Turkmenistan, there was a king called Mobed Manikan. His life is described as a continuous Nowruz that has always been celebrated, just like the New Year celebration. In the later times, in the pre-Islamic Sasanian period, Nowruz was also celebrated with much grandeur. We're told that the king gave gold coins and silver coins of the year's coinage, put in a lemon, a quince, or an apple. On that day, the people rested, and on the third day, the king held court and meted out justice to those who sought it. If Nowruz fell on the Sabbath, the king is said to have rewarded the Jewish populations, 4,000 silver coins as present. The court singers presented songs about the new year, and there were even, we have still, I think, melodies which are called bahar, or meaning spring, that is somehow story-wise attached to that remote past. Sorry. With the coming of Islam, Nowruz continued to be celebrated by the caliphs in Baghdad. During the Abbasid Caliphate in the 9th century AD, it is reported that people celebrated the Nowruz by kindling bonfires on the New Year's Eve and poured water on each other. The people in Baghdad gave each other an apple to honor the day and colored eggs for the feast. Cooks worked through the night to make fresh food for Nowruz, and people threw parties for relatives and friends. Fruits were served, such as the green melons, plums, peaches, and dates. Muslims even drank wine in public, one text tells us, when celebrating the new year, Nowruz. Let me read you just a passage from a medieval text, Al-Jahiz, actually 10th century, when he describes what is going on in Isfahan, in a bazaar, during this Nowruz period. Brief. During the Nowruz festival, people gather for 7 days, engage in merriment. They enjoy various food and go around visiting decorated shops. The inhabitants and those coming from other places to participate in this festival spend a good deal of money, wear beautiful clothes, and take part in gatherings for plays and merrymaking. Skillful singers, both male and female, take their places side by side on the riverside along the palaces. Zayanderud probably, right? The whole atmosphere is filled with joy and happiness. Many assemble on the rooftops and in the markets, engage in festivities, drinking, eating, and consuming sweets, not letting an idle moment pass by. This is 1,000 years ago. If we come to the 16th and 17th centuries, the Safavid Shahs of Iran also celebrated Nowruz with great fanfare. The French traveler Jean Chardin, who traveled to Iran, beautifully describes the activity of the Safavid court. According to him, eggs gilded and colored with special scenes were given as present. At the court, dancers, musicians, and singers entertained the crowd, while the court astronomers looked to the sky to call the exact time for the beginning of the spring. Once the time of Nowruz was called, there was huge commotion. Firecrackers, muskets, and cannons were fired as a sign of beginning of spring. Bands played music, and shouts of joy filled the air, and wild rue, esfand, was sprinkled into the fire so that the air would smell pleasant. As early as 100 years ago in Tehran, the Nowruz was sounded off by cannons being fired, and then Younger would kiss the hands and the feet of the elder. You youngsters, remember this time. And then they would in return be presented with gold or silver coins. Elders, remember that. Everyone wore their new clothes, and then they would go to visit each other's home till the 13th day of Nowruz. These very same practices still continue, not only in Tehran, but other cities in Iran as well. And of course, people eagerly wait for the coming of Nowruz. What makes Nowruz a unique festivity is that it is now celebrated by Iranians and other countries around the world, regardless of religious affiliation. Kurds and Iranian-speaking people celebrate Nowruz like any other Iranian people in modern-day Turkey, Syria, and Iraq, and of course Iran. Nowruz is celebrated by different ethnic groups who are at times divided, sometimes not so nice with each other, but they come together for this festivity and joyous occasion, including Afghans, Tajiks, Azeris, Kurds, Baluchis, Lors, Tajiks, Uzbeks, Turkmens, and I could go on, and many more people. The celebration goes beyond religious divisions. Muslims, Christians, Jews, Zoroastrians, and Baha'is all join and unite for this one celebration to greet the regeneration of Earth. What is it that all these people with different backgrounds and religious beliefs celebrate? It is the coming of the spring equinox, the celebration of a new season, and the continuation of the cycle of life and hope. As the great medieval scholar Biruni reports, the Iranians called Nowruz the Day of Hope 1,000 years ago. The earth turns green and brings hope for another great harvest for all humanity. This is one of those times when people can leave their differences aside and come together to greet Nowruz. Nowruz transcends all religious and ethnic divisions, and it has done so for many hundreds of years. Where the Iranians have been present, from the distant past till today, they have made Nowruz a great celebration to remember. From New York to Los Angeles here, Iranians, of course, celebrate Nowruz in the US as well. Nowruz lives on, and may it continue to do so a long time to come. This Iranian festivity is among the most unique cultural events which allows us to understand the Iranian heart and soul that has had a brilliant impact on, I think, generations for thousands of years. Thank you.